Assalamu alaikum. Today in our organic chemistry lab we will demonstrate our second experiment in identification of organic compound in macroorganism. Identification of organic compound in macroorganism, that means organic compound that is in our body as macroorganism. A macroorganism already known for you. Then what type of organic compound in macroorganism? Type of organic compound in macroorganism, we have protein, there, lipids and carbohydrate and nucleic acid. This we name as macronutrient. We have also in our body micronutrient, but that's micronutrient were not our issue today. We are speak about macronutrient, and it contains carbohydrate and lipids and protein and nucleic acid. Here we are not going to test in our lab nucleic acid, and it will be not included in our experiment. That means we have to test for organic compound containing protein and carbohydrate and lipids. For carbohydrate, here in lab also we have two types of carbohydrate. One it is saccharide and second is starch. And the test for saccharide is different than test for starch. And to test this one, we have to bring some sample, and this sample we have to identify the sample contain. To identify the sample contain for protein, whether it is contain protein or carbohydrate or it is contain lipids, then this it is qualitative analysis, organic qualitative. For organic qualitative analysis, we will use indicator, reagent. For all these microorganisms, there is reagent added to the sample to identify the type of organic compound present in the sample. And this it is long procedure. We have to go through it to identify the type of organic compound in the sample. Suppose we want to test whether it is a starch, it is present in our sample or no. Just for starch we have indicator, logos indicator, and this logos indicator, as we see, it is yellow. Okay, just we have to bring our sample and add drop of this logos. Logos, this is potassium iodide potassium. Okay, this iodide potassium iodide, IKI iodide potassium iodide. Add few drop from this one to sample, then color will change to dark blue color. In case we find dark blue color, that means starch is present in our sample. This test for starch, we will take this known volume of the sample and we'll add also known drop from this indicator. Okay, suppose you are testing for carbohydrate monosaccharide. You have Bindic reagent. Here it is written, it is Bindic reagent. It is used to identify whether monosaccharide it is present or no. Just you have your sample, take part of your sample, known volume of the sample in test tube, then add this one with the forehead and add Benedict. When you add the Benedict to your sample, the color will change into pale green. When this color pale green it is present, then that means your sample it is contain monosaccharide. Suppose you test for protein. For protein, when you test for protein, we will use purate indicator. It is this purate indicator already. Here we prepare it for this experiment and we will use it for test for protein. So for protein, you will bring your sample for protein and put your sample in test tube like this. One test tube like this. Add around 3 to 5 ml of your sample in test tube. Then you have to drop by this pipette this indicator into your test tube. Then check it. You check test tube, and if you need more, you put one drop more and check it. If the color of the sample change to purple shade, that means protein it is present. If not, that means the sample is not contain protein. Then you check the sample for another thing. If it is not contain protein, maybe you contain another say organic compound. That means you go to starch, glucose and lipids. If contain protein, we will have this protein is present. Here also, if you want to test for lipids, you want to know whether the sample is contain lipids or no. For lipids indicator used to identify or identification of lipids, it is Sudan 3. This is indicator, red color Sudan 3. We prepare it for this experiment, and just you have to bring your sample and just pour known value of your sample around 3 to 5 ml here from your sample, and after that you have to come and take also this dropper pipette and you put drop by drop indicator from Sudan 3 into your sample and check this. If the color of sample is changed to orange, that means your sample is contain lipids. If not, that means your sample it is not contain lipids. Then after this, you have to identify your 4 sample. Your 4 sample. Now you know from this sample 1, 2, 3, 4, as we have here sample 1. This one already I tested and I found in this one carbohydrate monosaccharide. Here this sample I tested and starch is there, and sample 3 it is tested and we have in this sample, suppose we have protein, and sample 4 it is lipids. Then you finish your practical work, clean your area, and that's all in this today experiment. Okay, just we'll start doing this practically. Okay, now we'll go to experiment 2, identification of organic compound, and we say organic compound or macromolecules that is in human being or in macromolecules. We have lipids protein, carbohydrate, and nucleic acid, as we explained it before. And the macromolecules at last, they have building block, or this macronutrient, they absorbed by human body in simplest form. Protein, it is in amino acid, and protein is amino acid, and carbohydrate also will absorb in form of glucose, and lipids in the form of fatty acid. Then we want to test this one, and we have 4 samples in the lab. Now we'll go to this practically to do the experiment. Just as we know, now we want to test, suppose, for lipids. Suppose we want to test for lipids. Then we have to take sample 1, and we'll test sample 1 for lipids, whether it is contain lipids or no. We'll take around 5 ml. Around 5 ml. This approximately, it is okay, it is enough now. This, and we want to test for lipids. Just go and see lipids, which reagent used for lipids. It is Sudan 3. Then you have to add few drop from Sudan 3 by this dropper pipette. Few drop. Okay, one more. Check during your check your test tube also. Check it well and check it. Just add few drop and check. Check, still continuous check, and continuous add drop, and we see what will happen. Okay, check it well and see if lipid present in your sample. During you are checking this sample, the color of sample, it will change to orange. When this orange color appears, that means your sample it contains lipids. Then in this case, sample 1, it is lipids, because if you have a look to test tube, it is changed the color into orange. And now we'll go to sample 2. Sample 2, which type of organic compound in sample 2? We want to go to sample 2 and take test tube, new one, and add sample 2 into test tube and test for protein in sample 2. Because already we have this sample, and just even you can buy physically you can observe whether the sample is contain protein or no. It looks like protein. It's near to say this one is contain protein. It is approx. Just to test for protein, you have to add purate reagent. Just go to reagent and purate reagent, add it to the sample. If the sample change to yellow or purple or violet color, that means protein is present. Just you add and see whether it is violet or no. Just add it, drop and check, drop by drop. Use this dropper pipette and drop by drop. Add more and more. Just drop and check. You have to check it. Just check. It is look like violet. Just add one drop more and see, because you want to see whether it is contain protein or no. Add one drop more. Just check it. Add drop and check. The color it is changed to violet, and that means protein it is present in this sample. Now sample 1 it is contain lipids, sample 2 it contain protein. Now we will test sample 3. Yeah, colors look violet and protein it is present, and we will use violet reagent for identification. And now we have sample 2 contain protein. We will go to sample 3. Sample 3. Here in sample 3, we look physically, it may contain monosaccharide. Just let me be sure. I will make test for monosaccharide. If it is okay, if otherwise we'll go to test it for starch. Just for monosaccharide, we have this Benedict reagent. Just use dropper pipette and add few drops from Benedict reagent, and if the color is changed to pale green, that means your sample contain monosaccharide. Just add and check, add and check, and I see the color already is going to pale green. Just add few drops to confirm the reading. Just few drops for indication to be clear or student. Just make it. It is pale green color, and that means carbohydrate here. It is contained monosaccharide, and the color change when we use Benedict reagent. And sample 3, it is contained monosaccharide. And we go to our last sample, sample 4. Sample 4 is supposed to be starch, but we have to compare it because we have 4 samples contain this 4 organic compound. To compare, take few around 5 minutes. Next, check it for your sample, check it back to work, and take use your test tube and take around 5 ml in your sample. And for indication of starch, we will go to Logos reagent. Logos reagent, it is iodide, potassium iodide reagent, and this will change the color from this milky when starch is there to dark blue color. When dark blue color appears, that means our sample is contain starch. Just add drop by drop and let us see what's happened. It is very dark, around black, and this dark is around. Add few drop more to compare. This dark color and this dark blue color. Just add few drop more for this one. Add few drop in the sample. Check. Add few drop more. And now see this become very dark. Check it more. Then this compared starch, it is there in sample 4. Now already we test for sample 1 that it is fat or lipids, and we use for lipids Sudan 3, and we compare the lipids is present. For sample 2 we test for protein, and we use it burette reagent, and we compare the protein present. For example 3, is carbohydrate, but it is monosaccharide, and we test by predict and we compare the monosaccharide present. For example, already we have a starch and we confirm it with adding few drop of indicator or logos indicator or iodide potassium iodide potassium iodide, and it is compared also the starch is present. And now we know which indicator we will use for identification of lipids and which indicator we will have to use for identification of protein, and which indicator we will use for carbohydrate monosaccharide, and which indicator we will use for carbohydrate starch. And after that you have to clean your area and finish. And now we are finishing this experiment to just